Try to make it up. Yes, some part of my background. Currently, I work with L&T. I think that's is not mentioned here, but I'm heading strategy for an organization within L&T, which is heading all the smart cities, IoT stuff, communication projects, and large communication like BharatNet. I don't know, National Broadband of India. That's something we have been working on, and there are a lot of projects around security and surveillance, which is like Mumbai. Today we have thousands of cameras deployed, and similarly Hyderabad and many other cities. So that's the kind of a background I have been in. And then earlier to this one, which is around this assignment is around 1.5 years. Before that, I was in McKinsey for 2 years, mostly on the digital advisory side for various organizations in India and plus some part of Middle East and South Asia. And before that, I was managing director Cisco. I used to head business for all the digital pieces. Smart cities was one big vertical. Again, the IoT side of manufacturing, utilities, oil and gas, that kind of stuff which we used to do in Cisco. And then we also were focusing on e-banking and some of this stuff on BharatNet or communication side. So that's something which we have been doing. So today, so the other thing is that please be open, don't wait for any questions to be short later on. I'm pretty much into the details of many of these programs. So try to give you the right answers, and where I don't know, I will tell you that I don't know. But don't wait for formalities that I'll ask in the last. And I'll try to see if whatever I can give you a bit of a real picture of what is happening in smart cities and possibly IoT within the urban landscape. Because even IoT is too vast a domain. I don't think it will be justice for the subject of IoT itself to be covered in this, but I think let's see how much we can explore. And my understanding, which I have, is that most of the people here are coming in from leading technology institutes, focusing on innovations and maybe new enterprises, entrepreneurship. Any other expectation from the room in terms of like people coming in from a different background, something which is like, I believe high level you guys understand a bit of technology in terms of what we are going to talk about, at least smart cities and IoT. Okay. So, so urbanization, big domain. I think if you see the last government which came in 2014, the same 1.0, Mr. Modi, when they started, smart cities was launched as a big program. The factor is this, that the urbanization is really growing at a fast pace. Almost like I would say 33-34% is what is urbanization in 2017, likely to be going up. Possibly it will touch 40% in next 5 to 7 years, because many of the smaller cities are slowly, or the kind of a village or towns are also moving towards becoming cities, because the population is slowly moving in from the remote corners for a better livelihood. They're coming over to the bigger cities. So that's something which is one big focus. If you look at the cities, there are beside the metros and maybe the next level towns, the top 10 cities, there is a significant number of almost like 200 odd cities which fall within the bracket of 300,000 plus. Anything which is 300,000 plus, if you compare to an international environment, like they call it a big city. But here what we say is that these are the cities which we perhaps will be focusing on. And the other thing is that as you see that this is going to be likely around 41% is going to become urban, and hence the focus. When in 2014-15, when this program was launched, the way it got announced, or the way it was structured, that out of all the 500, 600 cities that everybody was looking at possibly transforming, the program was such that you select about 100 odd cities through a very competitive and a very inclusive kind of a program. And when we say competitive, it meant was that they have to all these cities have to compete among themselves to become the top 100. Initial part was nomination, that every state was supposed to nominate a few cities, but then subsequently they have to fight for the program. And what was in the prize was the funding part. So every city was expected, like the 100 cities selected was supposed to be given a funding of 1,000 crores over a period of 5 years, 50-50 to be shared between the state and center. And then the rest of it, whatever was required to be done under the smart city program, has to be collected through PPP or some kind of a monetization program done by the city. Now, the other dynamics of this was that when the smart city plan was being formulated, they call it SCP or smart city plan. If you go to MOUD site, you will find some of those documents still there. What it meant was that they did a lot of they did survey from the citizens asking for what exactly you're looking for in the city. So it was that way, it was very inclusive. A lot of door-to-door campaigns were run, a lot of nukkad sabhas kind of thing was run, try to get more feedback. Like, do you really want, what is the biggest issue? Is it water? Is it security? Is it road and traffic? Is it like waste management? All kind of what exactly is the one which city is looking for? So that feedback came in, and on the basis, the city hired a consultant. Usually all the cities had a consultant while they were writing the smart city plan. They wrote a plan. It was also ranked on the basis of innovativeness, basically how innovative you can be in terms of bringing in new technology or bringing in some new factors of how do you look forward. That kind of a thing was also brought in the smart city plan. Another piece which was very important, which said is that can you really monetize the assets on the ground? Land monetization is one slightly easier part, because if you develop some area from the city perspective, the rest of it also comes up. Like if you do a proper road and proper water and every distribution becomes good, then it becomes a livable place, and then the rates go up. So that part was, monetization was very important in that whole program. And to execute this particular program, after it went through this process of selection, rating, and then finally shortlisting happened, and then they were announced that these are the top 100 cities. The execution part was left to an SPV, because I don't know how many of you are familiar, the current city structures, there are many bodies which govern a city. There's going to be a municipal corporation who's required to be managing the existing assets, which is like basically lighting, parking, water, bit of transport wherever it is there. So that they are responsible for managing the assets. They don't actually create the assets. There is a development authority which is supposed to create all these new areas. It could be industrial, it could be residential. So they mark those townships, and then they develop that area, and then they hand it over back to the municipal corporation. There is a transport authority which is supposed to manage all the public transport. There could be an electricity distribution body which is separate, and then there is a police which is supposed to manage crime. So there are multitude authorities which exist in a city. They all have their separate budgets, separate agenda, and then they don't really work with each other. And that's the reality of the cities, where there are silos. But what you see is, oh, this is not working, that is not working, but practically it is multiple organizations who are supposed to be delivering their part. Now, what happened is that because of this challenge on the ground, that when you call smart city, it has to be an integrated view, right? It cannot be looked at in silos from the expectation side of the people. So what they did was they formed an SPV, which was supposed to be more like a corporate governance. Where there was a CEO, there was supposed to be a chief knowledge advisor, there's supposed to be a CFOs, and the complete body, which is an execution body. They also supposed to have a consultant who will help them in bringing in some new ideas from outside as well. So that's how an SPV came into a structure with a smart city plan which was approved, which went through, with some funds which was planned, and then there is a seed fund which was, as I said, 1,000 crores, which was supposed to come in over a period of 5 years. So this is how these 100 cities, which you see all across the Indian geography, started becoming reality. In the last 4.5 years, maybe you may have a very cynical view that nothing is happening, what exactly has changed, it is the same thing. But on the ground, there have been a lot of movement. The projects are divided into two umbrellas. One is called area-based development, which is more like you select a defined area. It could be a greenfield area, or it could be a brownfield approach, where you select an existing city and then you start developing take some initiatives. While on the other side, there is going to be some pan-city initiatives. Pan-cities initiative is where you bring in more technology. Actually, that's you cannot implement a lot of physical things on the whole city as an pan-city initiative. So things like you do smart parking, you do kind of smart public transport, you do solid waste management all across the city. But IT has been the backbone of many of these pan-city initiatives. So we'll talk about some of the use cases as we go through the presentation, but that's on a high level so-called smart city program look like. Allocations of around 200,000 crores, right now around 100,000 crores plus have been tendered, and then they're in various stages of execution mode. Now we'll talk through what exactly is being done. Let me start with the first part of a surveillance network being set up in cities. I hope you have seen a lot of cameras being mounted all across the poles in the city. In Mumbai, at least, you can, if you go around, you will see thousands of cameras have been deployed. Now, what happens is that physical cameras are only one part of the solution. But then there is a huge intelligence which gets generated out of the data or out of those video feeds. Yeah. So all this data or all these video feeds travel to a data center which is centrally located, and then subsequently a lot of analytics are being run on those video images. And the cameras are of various types. You have zoom cameras, you have tilt cameras, you have thermal cameras for the night vision and those things. So, and then you have some of the cameras which are of very high resolution, especially in those areas where facial recognition is a must or is a sensitive areas. So there you run, because to run some very, for analytics like facial recognition, you need to have high resolution cameras even in like various kind of light intensity scenarios. Then subsequently what happens is that you have this kind of a control room, which is right now in, actually we have a disaster recovery also. So there is one command control room which is there in central Mumbai, and then subsequently there is going to be there is another one also which is functioning when there could be any issue which happens in the primary one. So that's this is the kind of where police people sit there and then they are analyzing all the images. A lot of alerts are being thrown in. Like for example, if there is an accident or there is a fire or there is some kind of a violation where they send bullet sound or some criminal track which they put video images of various criminals who are to be located, and cameras track those facial, because yes, please.
The size of the data that is generated and how long do we preserve that?
Usually as per regulation or maybe as per the standard practice, they preserve for 30 days. All like kind of in the data center, but then they do a cold store for another 90 days.
So it's obviously on the clouds, right?
Not obviously, many cities and most of the cities actually today are having on premises, like it's in the data center, which is of the police, because they believe that it is more secure data and those kind of things. But slowly there is a transition which is happening towards cloud.
Now, let's say you are using camera, CCTV everywhere. Now there is a privacy infringement also, because somebody may move the camera towards some building. So is there any restriction or anything that measure that you are taking to restrict that type of activity?
Yeah, so the cameras, the direction for police surveillance is public view. So they are not mounted or they are not directed towards any private citizen life or anything. But the direction is that all the public hotspots, especially most of the cameras are mounted on junctions, traffic junctions today. The next set of expansion which is going on is maybe expand further into maybe slightly more public view hotspots.
In that case, that may be directed towards anybody's window or like that?
No, I mean like finally public, when it is in public view, whatever is view in public view is the responsibility of police anyway. Getting into a home of anyone is not the objective, and they cannot put it. They have to take maybe special permission for any such thing where it needs to be tracked. So there is no such privacy violation which is happening. Whatever is being done as per the law only is being done. So yeah, obviously as we move ahead, there's going to be like there have been some news in US where the
You will face this kind of problem getting the permission to record.
You mean for public?
Yeah, for some of the
For law and order, they can. They have their larger picture of law inside, that they can record everything in public view for the purpose of managing law and crime or traffic, right? So and then there are various use cases on AI or artificial intelligence which is being now created, where at least 20-30 of them. Facial recognition is one of them. Vehicle tracking is another one of them. Lost person, like if you say some child is lost, then you can inform, and then you can give the images, and then they will try to track it on the various cameras wherever they were last seen. In case there is a chain snatching, we have like there have been a lot of every day on every day basis there are cases getting resolved. And then there is obviously a post incident investigation as well. As you asked, 30-day storage is mainly for like in case you figure out that there was an incident some time back and you need to track that, you can pull up the data and you can check on the basis of date, time, location, and then can do the investigation. Even courts use those feeds today for the purpose of even following up there as a proof of or evidence of any incident which happened. Usually these are not compressed, they are like stored as such, because same for the purpose of law only. Okay, the other one, like this is something which I spoke about, right? The various video analytics which is being run, data center is the core thing. Yes, we also, there is a lot of drone based surveillance is being done, like whenever some big festivals are being arranged, like Ganesh Chaturthi or maybe Ganesh Visarjan, lot of drones are used, because at that point of time you have to put a lot of extra cameras to manage. And in case there is there was an incident of fire sometime back in Mumbai, so you have to run those drones to kind of move as fast as possible and maybe take different views, because if it is on the 20th floor, then naturally you don't have a public view. So you have to try to figure out how do we solve those issues. So that's something which is moving, and day by day basis, I think this is becoming more and more intelligent. So when you say IoT or AI, it's a full play here in the cities today. It's happening today, and if you ask me what's going to happen in next 1 year, looks like that AI is going to be playing a big role in every such management which is going to happen in the cities, whether it is traffic, whether it is crime detection, or whether it is any incident analytics. This was recent Prayagraj Kumbh Mela, where more than 20 million people were there on one single day at the Mela, and cameras were deployed all across. I don't know how many, if you remember that time there were news about it. So we were doing facial detection, we were looking at crowd counting, we were watching the traffic flow. The idea was also to, in case there is any stampede. So how stampede happens, right? So you figure out that, okay, in this particular camera zone or this particular zone, the number of people suddenly have started increasing, and the flow is not moving. Either there is some maybe obstruction somewhere which is not letting the flow happen, because there is X number of people have to move from one camera to second camera to third camera as perhaps the flow has been defined. But if it is not happening that way, that means that there is a possibility of perhaps stampede in that situation. So you have to rush all the agencies which can resolve the situation before the stampede happens. So that kind of like all those technologies were deployed, and I think this is going to be one of the perhaps use case which could be talked across the globe, because there has been never a scenario where 20 million people will be at one place, and then you are running AI analytics on top of it. So that's kind of a thing which is happening in our cities. Traffic has been another big play area in a smart city, where today if you see when the traffic is approaching particular red lights or lights, it could be 4-lane, it could be 5-lane, depending on whatever the junction side is. You have to define the queue length. You need to check what is the queue length in particular area, and then also figure out that which lane the traffic is, whether they're going to move right or left. But practically it is not just the red light management which you need to do. You have to look at from A to B how much time it's going to take, and you have to resolve the larger stretch challenge, that how do you optimize the travel time from A to B usually, and that's how they play out that, okay, what should be the timing of this particular light, and then what should be, whether it should be this way green, that way green, or maybe any kind of optimization which can be run. So it is basically 3-4 parts. One part is the detection part, where you either put cameras or radars to figure out how much is the queue and how many vehicles. You can also figure out, by the way, ambulances and some of those VIP vehicles, if in case you need to be pulled up on a faster lane, or even public vehicles where school buses and those kind of things where you need to give priority. So that's something which you detect through the cameras or through the radars. Then subsequently you look at possibly running a communication network where you bring in all the data to a central place where you run all the algorithms to optimize the traffic. And algorithms run on various methods, like practically queue length is one of them, but then subsequently you have to figure out, okay, fine, how many people will be turning right and left, and then on the next signal how much traffic is going to be there, and then how do you optimize the whole travel time stretch. So that's the kind of a thing. And by the way, we have our own professor within IIT Bombay also is getting deeper into assisting many cities, Tom Matthews, helping the cities to evolve this kind of deployments which are happening. And then there are standard other use cases of e-challan, where I don't know whether any one of you have faced e-challans coming to your mobile phones. So how it works is that when on the red light violation detection, there are cameras. So if you violate the red light, there is a number plate camera also, which will check your number plate, take a snap, send it to your whatever email and your phone, and practically it is a challan with an evidence. So in Bombay, it has been happening. So e-challan means red light violation detection cameras and automatic number plate cameras, which is done. Whether in all the toll entries today in Mumbai, you have these cameras which can detect all your number plates, can read it, can also even do a bit of a vehicle analytics, and some of this facial also is being deployed there, where if criminals are being, the pictures are being given, they can detect at the toll entry gate also that who is entering or who is, how do you track them. So that's piece which is traffic is one big use case in cities where the technology is going to play a big role, both IoT and AI. Transport, which I would mean multimodal transport or public transport, is another very big use case. Now, in case any one of you have traveled abroad, like unlike in our Google Maps, when we take some option from A to B, you usually get a option of either maybe either your car, how much time it will take, or you sometimes it started giving you a train option also. But all kind of multiple options available, and then how you combine the two is something which we have seen in like UK and various places they have deployed. So practically you map every piece of all the options which are available for public transport, and then also some kind of a private transport, how much time it will take to walk A to B, and then which is the last mile, and then from there on you can take a train or a bus or possibly any other taxi or anything else. So that's the kind of a thing which is happening. So now what happens is that every bus you deploy, beside deploying GPS, you are also monitoring the dynamics within of the whole machine within the bus. We also, like, there are possible deployment of information dissemination systems also, like those screens or public announcement systems, which are fully connected with a central database and a central monitoring mechanism. So there is a lot of technology which is playing behind it, which is basically all bus stops will be carrying, okay, how much time this bus will be taking and when is it going to come on a live basis. And then it is also being managed that in case this bus is not going to make it because of some failure in the system, then alternative bus has to be rerouted to reach that stop. So it's a real and then plus the fare collection thing is also a part of it. Now when you get in, either how your money gets deducted, and when you come out, how many rides you took on entry exit points. So that's a piece of fare collection as well. Like the challenge is, I think, I don't know whether in the recent budget, if you have seen, they announced that one single card across all the agencies of transport within India. So that's something which they are going to work on. Like Mumbai itself has some 14 agencies which work across each other. You have different public transport, like your Mumbai based thing is there, then you have your Navi Mumbai, Kalyan. So there are multiple agencies, and they have metro, you have those local trains. So practically all these agencies need to work with each other, and there's a lot of science behind it, like the number of people entering a station or exiting at any point of time and how much time it takes to deduct the amount from their card is one very sensitive area, which is again a big part of the technology resolution. Wi-Fi, on a standard scenario, you see your Wi-Fi is like what is so big in the technology, but actually in a public domain scenario, Wi-Fi becomes very sensitive, as well as you can make it much smarter, because you can track every person in terms of the movement, like how many people are there at particular location and then which direction they're moving, and then you can throw a lot of ads or information as per their location. So you're exactly aware of what sensitivity. So to give you, maybe not scaring you, there's all your data, which in terms of whether your income, your age, your sex, everything is possibly becomes not to the extent of personalized data, but on a basis of anonymous data is available with all the mobile service providers. Their personal data also available, but they cannot share it on a personal basis, that they can do anonymous data sharing. So at exactly every location, they can track how many people are there, what age group, what profile, students, working, professional, everything they can figure out. And then on the basis, you can play as much intelligence you want to play. You want to throw information, you want to throw ads, you want to play any kind of campaign, that's your call. So that's what, when we say smart Wi-Fi, is what is going in that direction. Waste management has been another area where today you've seen all those vehicles which collect the garbage in various bins moving around. Now, how it works is that there is a defined route. Every time municipal corporation hires some X number of vehicles, they make them go around. Whether they clean it up, we don't know. How much time they actually, how many vehicles were hired and how many drivers were hired, there is no physical verification today. And then also whether they really, they are able to clean up, maintain the whole city clean, that's also something to be kind of disputed. Now, what is happening is that a lot of cities, and this is a big program, that we're putting sensors on the bins, and fill level of each dustbin is being managed through a central command control, where you are able to give a route to or routes to the number of vehicles which are moving around. So practically there have been in most of the cities, if there were 100 vehicles today, they are able to optimize it to maybe 60 or 55 or that kind of optimization which has happened, because actually those vehicles were just moving around, billing it to the, like on a X number of kilometers per rupees per kilometer. On the basis of that, they were billing it to the city. So the expense is coming down significantly. Plus, there are pictures of evidence that they have really cleaned up those dustbins. They are, you can exactly figure out where the life situation of the vehicles are. So using just a basic technology of GPS monitoring and some cameras and sensors, they are able to manage the whole city on a waste management side. And there are a lot of even further innovative applications which are around it. Like you can practically track even the garbage coming in from source to destination, because there are waste to energy plants. You pick it up. There are obviously corruption at every end, because cities hire private contractors to execute every piece of work. Now, how do you manage and how do you really give a service which is world class is something which is where technology is playing all across. Smart lighting is one very big implementation which is going on. I don't know, there are 28 million light poles in the country, out of which one big part is that most of them was those old lighting systems, those bulbs. They are in the process of converting those bulbs to a LED system. But then the next level of automation which is happening is that how do you manage those lighting, because LEDs can be controlled on a different light intensity level. You can raise the intensity higher or lower depending on what is the light condition around. So today, like most of the systems are manual, where they have to do it on a time based, where somebody goes there, switches off the light every morning, every evening. Many times you would see that the lights are even on during the daytime, or because that's what, as per the timing system, it works. But on a basis of sensors deployed there, you can actually figure out on the basis of light intensity around, on the basis of motion. So in the night, when there is no traffic or there is nobody around, the light intensity is brought down or switched off, or alternate lighting system. So that practically the expense on account of one, the energy consumption on on the poles, plus second part of it is also the maintenance part. So today, like every city, municipal corporation, the contractor will submit that 10% of the lighting is going faulty every year, or maybe more than that. Now, to the extent of it is budget, like every city will have to spend that money. But actually, are these lighting really going faulty, or maybe more lights are faulty, and the conditions where citizens are not happy? So those things can be done on the basis of complete program. You exactly know which light is working at what intensity level, and what is the projected kind of a consumption this month, what was the consumption last month. So that's what a smart system in lighting scenario is working around. And many of the cities actually have started implementing on a initial level basis. Parking is another big area. I think worldwide they say that almost like when cities are, like when vehicles are looking for, that's one of the biggest cause of traffic congestion today. Because places wherever the public is like supposed to be visiting, they are mostly maybe basically moving around just to look for the right parking for themselves. Now, one part of it is information availability, like how much of information, how many parking lots are available at this particular area, so that you can move to the right place itself. But then the further smartness is that they are able to give exact slot based availability. So you put either sensors or camera based monitoring, where you can look at possibly all the slots and can send the information, okay, this slot number this at floor number this, either on street or off street parking. On street is something which is on the public road, and off street is something which is off parking lots. So which slot is available, you can run the apps, and then you can pre-reserve your parking. You can buy a monthly slot, you can figure out the exact availability, you can decide whether I have to park 500 meters away and get a free parking, or whether I have to park here and I can pay maybe 100 rupees an hour. So all kind of options become, so it helps government, it helps you, and it helps businesses also. Because if there is a parking guy who has made 5-story parking, but then he's not able to tell you that, okay, I have all the parking available, how would it, it's a loss for business as well. So that's where the whole parking automation or smart parking is moving towards. Smart pole is another big area. How many of you have heard of 5G? Okay, so right now most of the telecom things are deployed around 4G. There is a direction that most of the systems will move towards 5G in next 2 to 3 years, subject to spectrum auction and all those things. But when you move to 5G, which is where you will start moving to a very high speed, like maybe you can get a 1 Gbps kind of a speed on your phones itself, the number of base stations will go up, the number of cell sites will go up. Today, the number of whatever X number of cell sites that you see around, from where you get most of your signal, likely to be a scenario that it may go up 5 to 6 times. To do 5 to 6 times of number of cell sites, there is no way you can deploy it on the basis of whatever rooftops and those things. It has to be done on some of the poles on the public streets, and that's one of the options where telecom industry is looking at, that can they converge with the cities, start using the light poles for your 5G coverage, because there is no way you can get a 5G coverage till the time you are reaching very close to the customer, or maybe within 50 to 100 meters of the subscriber, and that's where the direction will move. Now that's one use case of 5G base stations moving to the street, moving to the light poles. But then there are a lot of other things like cameras we spoke about. There's going to be more like environmental sensor where you measure the temperature, humidity, pollution, etc. There's going to be Wi-Fi hotspots. There's going to be loud public announcement systems. You have seen those video signages also. There's information dissemination that can also be mounted on the same pole. So a pole is likely to become a big asset. They will call it smart pole. But a smart pole means that where you aggregate all these high-end sensors and information dissemination or collection systems, share the power, share the space, and share the IT backbone or the fiber backbone as well. So that's the likely resolution where maybe cities will converge their effort with telecom and with other utility agencies to convert their existing poles or light poles to smart poles. Water is another big area where it's right now most of the meters are mechanical meters. They are not smart meters. They are not electronic meters, and the revenue collection in most of the cities is so much lacking that non-revenue water is the biggest problem of the cities. So non-revenue water is where you don't get to bill them, or maybe you don't get billed because the water is getting either pilferage. Around 45% of the water in most of the cities is non-revenue. And that's one big area where cities are working. They are deploying smart meters, where they are going to be collecting the data on almost on a live basis. They are going to be monitoring the whole pipeline with full IoT sensors, not just the water pressure, but also the water pressure is mainly for leakages and ensuring that the proper water supply is there, but also checking the quality of water. So that quality sensor of water is also being deployed all across at various not just on the source point, but also closer to the distribution point, so that they can, because finally it is all connected to health, right? Health and sanitation. That's somewhere it will lead to. So either you invest here or you invest later on in the health initiatives. So that's something which is going on, and obviously bringing in technology for leak detection, for managing the quality of water, or maybe pumping. So practically it's every piece IoT sensors are coming in. And then you obviously run some software algorithms, and through central command control, you manage all the assets of water distribution. Environmental sensor, I don't know, many of you would have seen, to measure temperature, humidity, pollution. There are like maybe more than 40, 50 parameters which is being detected through environmental sensors. But this is very sensitive information, because that's on that basis you can figure out what all new maybe basically in case the temperature is going up or maybe pollution is going up, then you can decide whether the traffic has to be routed this way or some other action has to be taken by the authorities. So that's something which I thought would give you a maybe overall view of what is happening in smart cities, and obviously core themes are communication, IoT, cloud, AI. That's what the baseline of all these solutions are getting deployed. And then obviously platforms for every application and utility is one of the key things. So all this data which is going to be coming in, whether it is water, whether it is parking, whether it is traffic, transport, all this data comes at a single level now. Now if someone is doing a pipeline for water, the traffic gets immediate information that this is going to be a digging happening at this area for this and this number of days. So you have to either reroute the traffic or figure out a plan of action to do that. So now bringing the information at single layer is what is the one which we say real core of smart city. Earlier everyone used to work in silo, but at least with this transformation or this moment, this is where the direction is. So I talked about all these words, but these are the words actually happening in action.
From where
Okay.
the hardware is managed.
Sorry.
Hardware, technology for hardware.
So technology for hardware, like okay, so the hardware, what are the various pieces of hardware that we said? We cameras, switches which are going to be so connecting. How do you connect from the data to travel? Fiber network, right?
Sensors.
And sensors, and maybe possibly Wi-Fi access points or those the other pieces of video screens and all those things. So being management, like you basically are monitoring all the time. There's these sensors in terms of upkeep and or information pulling up or information distribution. So everything is being managed through a centrally command control room, and where you can see exactly, okay, how many sensors are right now at various locations. You know the exact location. You can check the uptime also of that.
My question is whether those sensors are manufactured in India, import.
Both. Depends on like which sensor we are talking about. Cameras, parts of it are imported, and most of the assembly is being done in India. Sensors, yes, all kind of different sensors. Some part of it is being manufactured in India, some parts being imported.
That which capture the download and all. So how they send it's to the cloud? It's being sent to the cloud control room, because it will take some time.
Yeah. So the layers of let me explain. Right. There is a sensor. There is maybe a communication network which uses the data and then takes it to a central place, and then there is a data center or cloud, whatever we may call it, right? And there is an application running on the cloud or a data center which is basically analyzing this data and then giving you some feedback or control back. Now your question was more on communication, where how do you communicate the data? There is usually
We are talking real time here.
no, so mostly wireless, because the density of the cameras are so high, so usually we don't use wireless, we use fiber networks. We have fiber networks where the data is pulled in on optical back to the data center.
So that means it is actually not a wireless.
Wireless can only be as a more like a backup for some of the scenarios, but the wireless speeds are not dependable.
So you have to lay the optical fiber.
In many cases, yes. Many cases we take the telecom service provider fiber.
You use the same different frequencies.
Wherever a fresh digging is required, it has to be done. Wherever there is no fiber, or last mile has to be done. So there is a point of presence somewhere, maybe 100 meters, 200 meters, or 500 meters away. From there, someone has to do the fiber, either aerial or underground. See, most of the services, if we say cameras, obviously it's a part of police, it's surveillance. So there is nothing to be paid for that. As far as Wi-Fi is concerned, like in case you want to use Wi-Fi, right now most of the cities are running on some 30 minutes free Wi-Fi, or some programs like maybe then in a day you pay 100 Mbps free or something like this, right? Beyond that, they are trying to figure out how to bill you. Not many cities have started billing, but then it's likely to be billed. However, the other services like smart water or maybe traffic or transport, they're going to be all like responsibilities of corporations and authorities as a part of service and operations. Rather smart city. So smart city SPV is supposed to manage, maintain, operate under either with the help of a contractor or with the help of a consultant.
Means there is scope for private agencies to subcontract municipal corporations.
Yes, there are tenders. As I said, there are some tenders floated for some 100,000 crore plus, and private bodies, institutions bid for such projects and get if they are awarded the project, they are supposed to execute, maintain and operate for 5 years. Depending on what the model is, see, I talked about smart parking. Smart parking is an additional layer of technology coming in over and above the physical infra of parking. So basically, if you have to deploy cameras and sensors and then put up a communication part and then application has to be created, that's what a smart parking layer will be. Physical parking in terms of either off street or on street has to be created by either municipal corporation, or it could be under a contract where PPP could be a model, where some private partner comes and maybe builds the parking, but then shares a revenue or does it on a commercial model with the corporation or with the city. Yeah, so there are both the parking available. I think you deploy cameras and you can also deploy sensors. Sensors, sometimes the problems have been that maintainability has been an issue. So what they do is on the basis of camera, they can actually do the marking of those slots. If you see the camera, I think, okay, so I don't know whether this is not, image is not there, but you can whole field of view, that in case I put a camera here, I can mark every seat. Then in case there is nobody seat there, it can immediately give me a warning that in this seat number X, there is no one sitting there. Actually, you can, within the field of view of a camera, you can mark every parking slot. And sensor is actually on the basis of a sensor which is either ground-based sensor on the ground. So it detects the light has to be checked. Yeah, but then there are problems of maintainability, because what happens, sensors, it's a battery thing, right? It's practically no camera. You know exactly because you are monitoring actually cameras from the central place.
How to balance the traffic load in the smart city?
Traffic load. So as I said, these are all the elements of traffic, right? So you do adaptive traffic.
Particular routes is taking the number of routes, then busy, then another route empty. So how they will manage?
So on the basis of the like, if there are some 300 junctions in the city, every junction the data is coming to the central place, where you know exactly how much traffic is being coming in from which direction.
I am standing here and on the red light. Then which route we will choose? How
So see, as per the algorithm, you can only sense that if you are in the right lane or left lane. It is an assumption that if you are in the right lane, you will turn right, or if you are moving straight. But that is what is the problem of Indian behavior. There is no lane-based driving. There is a two-wheeler and four-wheeler mix. There is a people who don't care about like whether you want to move from left to right or right to left. That's a
left line very busy, and it is having a heavy load, and other right lines is having a slow load. Then all these routes are connected in the center point.
Yeah, so practically on the lane basis, you have to predict how much traffic is going to go right or left or straight. On that basis, you figure out, okay, how many vehicles are, what is the queue length in this junction, what is the queue length in maybe the next preceding junction or succeeding junction, and on basis you manage the traffic lighting control, timing control.
And then for the state is also being a load.
Yeah, like for example, but there's a time where there are times like if the queue length is going beyond maybe the plan of action, then nothing can be done. Practically, if you know that beyond 100 meters, it could be 1 kilometer queue length, then technology cannot play a role, because the physical infra has to be upgraded. Technology will play a role where on the basis of the information which is coming in, how you adapt the existing physical infra. It can bring in smartness to the extent of optimization. It cannot create a physical infra of its own.
So
Yeah.
government is pushing so much for these smart cities, but has it laid down any regulatory framework for laying down smart infrastructure?
You mean by regulatory framework? Well, everything is under regulation only.
I mean, have they decided upon the frequency bands to be used for high density, low data rate sensors? Because if you are using the COTS equipment, using those same bandwidths which everyone else is using, once this density of sensors increases, they will start interfering with my communication, and in that case, some people may not like this kind of thing.
So sensors being deployed for the purpose of picking up or measuring anything, like maybe environmental sensor is what we talked about. Those environmental sensors are fiber connected, so they are like directly connected to the fiber. So there is no wireless in there. Places, let me answer you. I got your question. So places wherever you are using wireless for connecting the sensors, there are various options that we are using. Practically, we use LoRa also in many places. But all these technologies which we are using, whether it is a narrow band or a broadband, is being used within the regulation only. There is no such interference. See, if it is a free spectrum, free spectrum will have to kind of on the basis of like whether it's a low data rate or a high data rate. Mostly sensors are on the low data rate, but if it is camera, then it is a high data rate. That is why we don't use for cameras we don't use wireless, because it's not a dependable scenarios, at least not as of now. So we are using fiber for cameras. For the sensors, yes, it is used at least last mile is wireless. So because it's very low data rate and they're all highly secure also. So you run the security layers on top of each data which is getting transmitted, and there is no interference as such. Like it's on the again like moving ahead, all this driverless cars and those kind of things will obviously have to be, the whole infra has to be upgraded. It cannot work on the existing ones because the speeds of the car you have to control on the basis of what the next vehicle is, unless you have IoT. That will be defined in the IoT standards.
Because in the,
5G.
even 100 years back when wireless communication started, government made separate spectrum for police networks, and normal people cannot access that. So why not now that we reserve certain bandwidth for smart
It is
city
reserved.
infrastructure?
No, not for smart city. For IoT, various layers of sensors, they have spectrums defined, and they in
That's
case
the kind of regulatory framework I'm asking for.
it's already there. Everything is under WPC only. The Wireless Planning Commission has defined regulation under which the spectrums are being managed. There is no violation of any device which goes outside the spectrum. So don't. I think there is no such actually question which is a problem that they will interfere with each other. No, there. But the data which is not very like, for example, if it is a health device or something which is very sensitive data which is traveling, then they will have to use a mode which is going to be more secure. But something which is more data collection like smart meters and all, right now all this.
It's all about, not only about the wireless thing. I mean, provisioning for service pits, for laying fiber, and I mean all other kind of stuff.
I think we can take that
Standard for enclosures.
beyond this class.
Now there is a regulation for that also. Like there is a rule which is there in municipal corporation of how do you dig a pit and how do you put a board and all those things. This is like a standard process.
We'll just take one more question because we are all late for the lunch. We are all hungry. So any more doubts or Professor Kaushik will be available in the lunch. Also.
Yeah, I'm doing
Yes.
the lunch. Anything
So
you want to
is
add?
there,
Okay, last question.
is there, you mentioned around 2 lakh crores for this smart city project. Is there anything for academia?
Within each smart city program, if the city has defined a program or defined like they have, what they have done is they have called innovation centers have been assigned some projects where each city is also bringing up an innovation center to nurture startups, bring in academia. But it has if you're living in say maybe Calcutta, right? And you pull up the smart city plan of New Calcutta, and then you will see all the projects which are there. You can check whether there is any such project which has been assigned or where it needs academia to be a part of it. So usually smart city CEO or some of those projects, wherever they need, they will pull. For example, like I was telling, right, Tom Matthews, I have called in a few times to Pune, PCMC, where he is helping the city to adapt or write the RFPs for new traffic adaptation for various junctions. So yes, institutions are working along with the cities. In MP, I don't know which technology institution, they were part of while building up for 7 cities integrated command control, all the valuation, helping us on the writing of the project, what should be the use cases. Many places. IIT Chennai has been working along with few Chennai and few other Tamil Nadu cities. Yes, it is. Right. Thank you so much.